Here is a small recap of the last 2 chapters we've covered, and then we'll get right in part 12. Henry and the commander are having a conversation. The commander tells Henry that if he had known he was in a war with the Arthurs, he would have come to help them. Henry tells him that there's no need to apologize. The commander takes Henry to a certain room and tells him that they should get to the point. He shows him the black amniotic fluid, which Henry recognizes even before the commander could say what it was. The commander tells Henry that the Demon King will resurrect, and no matter how many Demon Kings they slay, one will always resurrect. He tells him to come after the war with the Arthurs ends so that they can make preparations to kill the Demon King when it resurrects. Wusa goes to visit the king of the Aeneid Empire to ask him to be his informer because he doesn't want to side with Henry in being a part of the fight against the Arthurs. The king listens to Wusa but later orders his death because he doesn't want anyone to enter his mind and learn that Wusa is working with him. At the Snow Tower, Henry is meeting with the other wizards, and he presents his plan to them. He first shows them the map and tells them that he will share his plan in detail. Princess Hongwu worries about Wusa and asks Juasa, but he tells her that they're unable to track him. Henry tells the wizards that, though calling the plan winning might seem exaggerated, it will work. He plans to ambush the empty capital, taking Arthur's head while 10,000 Imperial soldiers are lured into close combat by the United Country in J-Bag. Everyone agrees, and concerns about other cities like Vivaldi's safety are addressed. Henry assures them he's signed a joint agreement and ordered the construction of a spinning wall. Imperial soldiers attack Vivaldi but are defeated. Attempting to climb the walls, they lose their grip as Vivaldi soldiers spin the wall around. The Aeneid king visits the prison for Balak, terrorizing guards with Draken until Balak appears. Balak agrees to accompany the king and avenge King Silver Jackson, pledging loyalty, while Draken is tasked with caring for the other prisoners. A few days later in J-Bang, when the Imperial army arrived, they built a fortress called the Holy Tower. Inside the tower were the peace devotees of St. Hall who had surrendered and allied with Arthur, the paladin of the peace religion Lozier, and the only saint of the peace religion Irene. The Imperial Knight Kington Porum told Irene and Lozier that the star of the battle in J-Bang was in their hands and instructed them to give it their all to ensure the peace region remained in its state. Irene brought her hands together and suggested starting with a prayer. The people gathered and prayed with Irene, and as they prayed, a light surrounded the fortress. From a distance, Henry stared at it and remarked that he wasn't expecting divine power. An elderly man behind him commented that divine power is forbidden in war and speculated that the Pope must have gone mad. Henry instructed the old man to activate the magic circle they had made earlier inside the walls. The elderly man and his friends started the magic circle, and Henry decided to test the power of the saint. Protected by a shield, he flew above the fortress and chanted a spell to summon a meteor. The people in his group were shocked, with one asking if he really just said, "Summon meteor," and questioning the nature of the magic. The older man explained that it was a spell that literally summons a meteor. Observing the meteor approaching, the people in the fortress and the army wondered what was happening. Irene and the people inside the fortress started praying to their goddess Irene for protection. Despite the shield, Henry fired more meteors at them. The people held on to hope, trusting in the power of the saint and priest, believing that with them, they were invincible. Henry Morris returned to his people and acknowledged their resilience in withstanding his attacks. He marveled at Irene's powers, stating they were incredible. He then turned to the people, suggesting that now that they had demonstrated comparable powers to the saint, it was enough as a greeting. Walking away, he ordered them to unleash all their magic attacks on the enemy once he was gone. He called forth Wisdom, a staff, and informed the old man that he had stored a large amount of mana and wisdom to withstand the attacks. Declaring his intention to bring back Arthur's head, Henry's friends expressed their belief in him. He then teleported away. He teleported into the Highlander Imperial Palace. The guards looked up, questioning his identity. Henry Morris identified himself and issued a warning that he planned to burn the place down in a minute. He urged them to run if they wanted to live. The people gasped at his words, realizing he wasn't bluffing. They started running toward the door, and Henry smirked at their retreat. However, his smirk vanished when he heard a man claiming to know him as the disciple of a rebel. The man on the throne, smirking, suggested they witness Henry's skills. Two men in robes emerged and stood in front of the king as a shield. Henry muttered about the bother and then shouted, "Sword out, quartersword!" Drawing his sword with armor on, he raised it to the sky, yelling, and "Roar of the thunder god!" Lightning appeared in the sky, shocking the robed men. Thinking he had defeated them, Henry declared it was too easy. Yet, when he took a clear look, he saw two beings standing before him. In disbelief, he wondered what they were. The king explained they were the Pin and Limb brothers, creations from life's end, enhanced through surgical procedures. The king revealed they were his masterpieces, created alongside chimeras. Henry yelled at the king to shut up, expressing his disinterest in the names of those destined to die. Arthur, the king, informed him about black mithril, a metal that blocks magic. He revealed injecting it into the brothers, rendering magic useless against them. As the two figures approached Henry, he drew his sword, seeking confirmation that magic wouldn't affect them. Suddenly, energy surrounded Henry's body as he explained his unique magic to Arthur. He mentioned his aura was a blend of knight's aurora and a wizard's magic, making it different. Henry swung his hand, chains emerging and connecting with the figures' torsos. Snapping his fingers, lightning struck them, and Henry declared it was over. He then addressed Arthur, explaining that it showcased the power of a magic knight who could use both aura and magic. Henry confidently stated that even an army of black mithril soldiers wouldn't stop him. Arthur appeared bothered as he observed Henry. He remarked that it seemed the disciple was better than the teacher. Addressing Henry, Arthur inquired about the source of his anger, asking if it was related to his teacher. He explained that their connection wasn't one of blood but that of a mere student and teacher. Henry, running towards Arthur, replied that if he was curious, he should ask his teacher in hell. He lunged at Arthur, screaming for him to die, attempting to stab him. However, it felt like his sword passed through a fog, surprising Henry. Arthur smirked, telling Henry that he would love to play with him longer but now wasn't the right time. He instructed Henry to take the Empire, claiming he didn't need it, and then disappeared into thin air. Henry dropped his sword on the floor, staring at the empty throne, bewildered by what had just happened. Meanwhile, Henry's soldiers continued fighting, encouraging each other not to cower. Henry teleported back to his base, his shoulders sagging. The soldiers walked towards him, and Henry apologized for failing his quest, causing the soldiers to gasp in surprise. He promised to explain the details after the war. At that moment, a short brown-haired boy named Hector appeared. Henry questioned Hector about his whereabouts, and Hector explained that he got lost. He grabbed Henry's hand, urgently telling him that Arthur might have conducted a chimera experiment in Life's End, attempting to create a chimera army. Henry pressed him for more information, and Hector shared his encounter in Life's End, where a prisoner revealed Arthur's plan to create an army of chimeras. The prisoner pleaded for help and died after their conversation. Processing the information, Henry understood that Arthur's true goal wasn't unification but building his army. He walked to the edge of the house, deep in thought. His friends turned to him, and the old man asked what he planned to do. Henry replied that he would end the war immediately. He extended his hand to the sky, and the army in the fortress stared up, questioning what was happening. At Henry's base, one of the old men explained that Henry was using illusion magic. Another old man added that he was attempting to share a memory with them. They watched the events in the palace with King Arthur. After showing them his memories, Henry introduced himself through the illusion, revealing that he was Henry Morris, a disciple of the deceased great wizard. He explained his long pursuit of Arthur, detailing Arthur's involvement in black magic, illegal human experiments, including chimera experiments, and how Arthur abandoned the throne and fled during their fight. Henry informed them that the Aenia Empire no longer existed, as the emperor they served had disappeared. The reason for pointing swords at their opponents had vanished as well. The illusion faded after Henry urged them to stop the war and go home. Saint Irene and Priest Logis were devastated upon hearing the news that they were helping someone who was using black magic and making chimeras instead of fighting against them. Irene knelt on the floor, crying, as they gave up on the war. Meanwhile, the soldiers wouldn't believe that there was no emperor to defend anymore. The people were in disbelief at what they had just watched. The news that the saints and priests had given up on the war reached the army, prompting them to drop their weapons and return to their respective homes. Hector looked at the retreating backs of the soldiers and remarked that the war had ended in vain. Henry turned to his friends, concurring with Hector that the war had indeed ended in vain. However, he assured them that it was over, and as promised from the beginning, he would ensure full autonomy for each country. A red-headed male expressed discomfort with the situation, stating that it felt like he had been rewarded without doing any work. A lady beside him agreed, and Henry observed that they had good hearts. Addressing them, he explained that this would be the second war with Arthur, and if they helped see it through, things would become easier. The Sori and the Duquesne agreed to lend their assistance. Henry then turned to a very old man, assuring him that there was no need to pressure Bang to join them, as he already felt sorry for causing trouble in the Henuran plains during the approaching harvest. The older man thanked Henry for his consideration. Henry concluded by stating that he would visit the Imperial Army. At the Imperial Army camp, the Imperial Army commander, Kington Porum, drowned himself in alcohol, deep in thought about King Arthur's abandonment. Angry at Arthur for fleeing in the middle of the war, Kington was interrupted by a soldier entering his tent, informing him of a guest from Bang. Before he could respond, Henry entered the tent, greeting him. Kington, filled with anger, stood up with his cup in hand and yelled, questioning how Henry dared to step foot in the camp. Ignoring the commander's anger, Henry asked if he had turned to alcohol since he had nothing left. Kington demanded to know what Henry was trying to accomplish this time. Henry replied that there was still no reason to fight, but he remained cautious. He explained that he was there to make an offer. An offer? Questioned Kington. Henry explained that, with the emperor gone, they needed a new face to distract the citizens. Kington argued that changing an emperor wasn't as simple as a kid's joke. Henry reminded him that Arthur had changed it with ease. He then warned Kington that his concerns were nothing compared to what Arthur might do to the empire in the future. Henry urged them to choose a new emperor soon. Kington suggested that Henry should do it, but Henry stated he had no interest in the throne and instead recommended someone else. Henry went to Ten's mansion and informed him that Aeneas' throne was empty, considering making him the emperor. Ten remained silent, and interpreting it as consent, Henry grabbed him and dragged him through a portal. In the meeting room of the Highlander Imperial Palace, Ten nervously introduced himself. Kington questioned if he was the emperor, and Henry, defending Ten, stated they should voice any problems directly. Henry explained his plan to disguise Ten as Arthur, maintaining stability until the war with Arthur ended. He instructed Ten to read a speech Arthur's had purportedly written, reassuring the people. Henry reasoned that such a speech would stabilize the economy and calm the public. The meeting attendees agreed. Henry then sought Arthur's location, summoning Scar, a frog-like creature, and asked for information. Scar revealed that he couldn't disclose Arthur's location due to being favored by a high-ranked person. Scar explained that revealing such information could jeopardize his existence. When Henry tried to guess the person's identity, Scar warned against it. An old man suggested obtaining the location of Draken Lodic, an anthropologist wizard suspected of betrayal. Scar confirmed he could provide this information. Later, Scar revealed that Draken had become a seven-circled wizard after consuming the devil fruit Gribble. Henry, surprised by another seven-circled wizard, learned Draken's current location, the southern Charlotte Plateau. Henry and his friends teleported to Charlotte Plateau, immediately finding themselves surrounded by vicious animals. Henry noticed the animals looking up, and upon doing the same, they saw Draken and Arthur's on chairs floating in the sky. Arthur spoke, mentioning his recently dispatched apostles. Henry inquired about the term, apostles, and Arthur's teased him, stating it wouldn't be fun to reveal the gift just yet. After bidding goodbye, The animals snapped out of their trance, growling at the group. Meanwhile, in Enkelman, a creature with tentacles and elf ears questioned Hars, who knelt before it, asking if he was the highest-ranked human there. Hars, trembling, replied affirmatively. The creature wrapped its tentacles around Hars' neck, but Hars revealed that he would be the one gone, cutting a call card in half. On the other side, Henry realized it was the call card he gave Hars, wondering what was happening in Enkelman. Just as an animal lunged at him, Hars fired and killed it, confirming it was over. As they walked, His Majesty informed Henry that he went to the temple to offer a sacrifice but couldn't find Janus. Henry questioned what he meant, and His Majesty explained feeling Janus's presence when he saw Arthur's, describing Janus as a god of darkness with a tyrant's personality. Before he could finish, someone patted Henry's shoulder, reminding him of the call from Enkelman. Henry opened a portal, and His Majesty decided to go with him, with the others joining. In Enkelman, they found Hars lying lifeless on the floor among others. Wondering who could commit such an act, they heard footsteps behind them. The person chanted, "All hail Arthur's, their god!" Turning around, they saw the undead, realizing it was the gift Arthur's had spoken about. All the call cards Henry had distributed indicated that he was needed. At the Shahatra Palace lobby, Arthur's apostle Guslander caused chaos, creating an army of the undead. The high priest, wounded and angered, called out the creature for its role in the chaos. Guslander, furious at the name, corrected them, stating his name as Guslander. His tentacle moved toward the priest, and a lady intervened to save him, resulting in her death. Guslander then wrapped his tentacle around the priest's neck, lifting him and proclaiming himself as one of the 9 apostles spreading the lessons of Lord Arthur's. Henry and his friend arrived, and Henry informed Guslander that he was the present Arthur's sent for him. Guslander, curious about Henry's identity, threw the high priest to the ground and declared his allegiance to Arthur's, boasting about the power of Janus. He lunged at Henry to attack him, but Henry extended his hand, reversing gravity and making Guslander float in the air. Drawing out his sword, Henry struck Guslander down. Hector knelt beside the lady named Celine, who had saved the priest, crying. Henry then summoned Scar, asking for an explanation. Scar, crossing his arms, informed Henry about an unprecedented apocalypse, with only 30% of humans left. Confused, Henry asked Scar to explain further. Scar revealed that the 9 apostles of Arthur's were wiping out humans, and a purple flower infection turned people into zombies. Apart from the 30% of unaffected humans, the rest were either infected by the flower or bitten by other humans, turning into zombies and becoming blind believers of Arthur's, including the countries Henry had allied with. Henry remarked on the combination of divine powers, blind believers, and apostles, suggesting that Arthur seemed like some kind of god. Scar asked if Henry had heard of the one whose powers Arthur's was using, but Henry remained silent. Scar inquired about Henry's well-being, to which Henry did not provide a response. They arrived at Khan's Eye and entered the cave. Henry observed the surroundings, thinking about the cave's name, resembling a human eye. Continuing deeper into the cave, His Majesty turned to him and handed over the only divine item he possessed. Henry expressed gratitude, assuring him of its safe return after defeating Arthur's. Reminded of the other divine items, His Majesty chanted in a foreign language while pressing his hand on a wall, turning it into a doorway. They both stepped through. Upon entering, Henry felt a sudden fall and hit the ground in pain. Laughter echoed, and looking to the side, he saw Haribala Khan II on a throne. Haribala welcomed his longtime friend Henry Morris and, claiming Khan's eye could see anything in the desert, revealed knowledge about the god's divine item. Henry joked with Haribala to stop reading people's minds, to which Haribala laughed. Discussing Arthur's trick to gain Janus's power, Haribala mentioned Arthur's rebirth through a foreign power, admitting his weaker divine power compared to the apostles. Henry, tightening his fists, asked Haribala to lend him as many divine items as possible. The mention of a cost prompted a dead stare from Henry, but Haribala assured him it was a joke and emphasized the challenge of defeating Janus. Henry, frustrated, yelled, questioning how he could find a stronger god to believe in. Haribala stated that the god could be everywhere and always watching. As he disappeared, Haribala informed Henry that he would have to find the answers himself and waved, adding a note to take care of his son and check his pockets. He woke up to His Majesty shaking him, groaning in pain and disbelief that his old friend threw him out like that. His Majesty inquired about his success, and he replied that he had, thanks to him being able to borrow the divine items. While in pain, he felt something in his pocket, pulling out an egg and wondering what it was. Henry informed His Majesty that he needed to look for another god, requiring him to strengthen Ra's divine power as the representative. Deep in thought, he considered making Hararian, the son of Ra, the new sword of Ra and the desert general. At Mushu Bulkanu's mansion meeting room, Henry informed the people that, according to his findings, only Mushu and St. Hall, the Holy Land ruled by the Pope, avoided the attack. All countries were invaded by the apostles sent by Arthurs, leaving only 30% of humanity alive, with the rest either dead or turned into zombies. Henry assured them that he would make Mushu a home for all survivors and prepare for Arthur's next attack. Messages left by the apostles indicated that Arthurs would appear on Lizark Hills a month from now. Henry emphasized the need to find a god to counter Janus's power, and urged everyone to be prepared. Hector, wearing armor, approached Henry with a favor to ask. Henry, curious about why Hector was in the armor, learned that all bodies made for him had been destroyed in the fight against the apostles. Hector's attacks couldn't reach them, seemingly absorbed by something. Henry wondered why his attacks worked while Hector's didn't. Hector explained that the armor was all that remained, so he needed a new body with increased strength. He asked Henry to make him another one. Another person asked if His Majesty could help, but he explained that he couldn't, as he only achieved it with Janus's divine power. Henry advised Hector to find a new god while he went on his quest. His Majesty, preparing to accompany Henry, was stopped as Henry explained that he had a month to become the desert general after becoming Ra's sword. Advising His Majesty to stay and learn swordsmanship, Henry received the Ra's scale from his pocket, an item used to measure divine power traits. The needle pointed to the sun for Ra's divine power carriers and to the moon for Janus's. Thanking His Majesty, Henry opened a portal and left. Henry appeared in St. Hall, the Holy Land's temple. He met Saint Irene and told her to hold the shalka. He watched the needle turn and concluded that the goddess of sun and peace has similar traits to the sun god Ra. When she asked him what it was, he replied. She then asked him what it said about her powers. Suddenly, the Pope appeared behind, asking whether he's the great wizard he has heard so much about. He introduced himself as Ras Borgia, the first Pope of the Holy Land, and said it's a pleasure to meet him. Henry turned and looked at him, saying it's an honor to meet the Pope. He introduced himself and Henry Morris as the only direct disciple of the previous great wizard. Henry, thinking that he wanted to test the Pope, took the shalka from Irene and made him hold it, not Irene. Henry gasped when they saw that the needle pointed towards the moon. When Ross asked what it meant, Henry lied, saying it meant his divine power is more powerful at night. Ross laughed, saying he should give his prayers more at night time. Then, Henry told the Pope that they currently have things planned ahead, so they should get going. The Pope replied he will see them later. After they left, the Pope spoke to himself, saying even if he's the great wizard, he's nothing compared to the almighty Lord Arthur's. Then he wondered how petty humans like him could understand the true extent of Arthur's divine power. He covered his face with his hands, and when he removed them, his elderly face turned into a young man's face with red eyes. Irene and Henry returned, catching the Pope red-handed. "I knew it, you slippery old man," said Henry. Irene angrily asked the Pope how dare he call himself the Pope when he's been corrupted by Janus. Ross replied that they caught him and he would show them the true power of the one he worships. He extended his hands and was instantly surrounded by red fog, transforming into a huge, hideous creature that Irene recognized as the Chimera. She told Ross that she couldn't believe he betrayed Lady Erinia for someone like Arthur's. Ross spoke, saying they should have a look at what the great wizard can do. Meanwhile, Henry stared at Ross, wondering what authors could have said to persuade even the Pope. Henry reached for his divine items. Ross got a glimpse of them and teased him, saying it looked like he had borrowed some low-grade divine item. He asked Henry if he thought he could hurt him with something as fake as that. Henry replied that he was wrong, stating he only believed in himself and that he would cut him down. He drew his sword, lunged at the Pope, and struck. A bright light appeared at the end of the sword while striking, ultimately killing the creature. He suddenly heard something crack, reached into his pockets, and took it out. He noticed it was the egg Haribala gave him when he visited the Khan's eye. He wondered what it could be as he looked at it. Meanwhile, Irene had moved close to him, apologizing for showing him such a shameful scene and expressing gratitude for his help. She slowly bowed her head, stating that if it weren't for him, no one would have noticed the Pope's corruption. He replied that he only did what he had to do and then shared his reason for visiting the Holy Land, to find a new god to oppose Janus's divine power. However, after witnessing the events with the Pope, he wasn't sure anymore and decided to give up trying to find a new god. Irene asked how he planned to fight against Arthur's. He replied that he would strengthen the things he trusts the most. Henry called a meeting with all the wizards at the Salgera Snow Tower. He started explaining that he gathered all the wizards in the Snow Tower for a grand announcement. He told them that he wanted everyone to strengthen their circles by at least 1 or 2 levels. An old man wondered whether something sudden like that was possible. Henry replied that it's simple, only the pain is immeasurable. That he told them that due to the upcoming final war that would decide the continent's fate. He called for some people who entered carrying urns filled with thousands of doses of black tar, almost as deadly as poison. He explained that they would experience pain like never before, and if they endured it, their circle would undoubtedly rise. He then mentioned he had brought a priest in case something went wrong. Then he yelled for everyone to start. When the wizards started drinking, the priest began praying. The wizards cried for help due to the pain, fell unconscious, and as he walked down the stairs, Henry spoke, saying eventually, everyone successfully became a 7th circled wizard. He thanked Irene and told her that without her it wouldn't have been possible. She replied that it was nothing. Henry told her that they still had 1 person left. 1 person? Asked Irene. Henry replied that the one who would follow in the footsteps of his master's 8th circle was him. The priest formed a circle with Henry in the middle. Henry told them to take good care of him so that he could make it to the 8th circle. Then, he opened the urn's lid and drank the contents. He groaned as he knelt to the ground due to how excruciating the liquid was. Meanwhile, Irene was praying to the great benevolent Irinea, asking for strength for the brave warriors who had gathered. The pain Henry felt was beyond imagination. A bright light appeared around him, and the cracked egg in his pocket lit up. Irene could feel the holy aura somewhere. Suddenly, Henry stopped crying in pain. Irene called out his name, and he stood up with bright, long hair. A strange light shone on his chest, and he announced that he had reached the 8th circle, thanking everyone present. The priests bowed and congratulated him. As he was thinking of changing his appearance because it was embarrassing, he reached into his pocket and took out the cracked egg. He noticed a pearl came out after cracking. He decided to look at it later because he had achieved his goal of reaching the 8th circle to go up against Arthur's. A month later, in a meeting room at Mushu, a man told Ronan that he had heard his father trained him for a month in the Purim family swordsmanship to fight Arthur's. Kington Rohan replied that he was right. He informed Ronan that, recommended by Henry, he could anticipate a fight against Arthur's. After Ronan's reply, Kington asked the man whether they had been doing well in training His Majesty in swordsmanship. He then told His Majesty that he looked forward to his skills. Suddenly, Henry entered the room, expressing hope that everyone was doing well and asking to get back to business. As Kington Purim stared at Henry, he felt an aura unlike before. His Majesty thought he had done his best in this 1 month, reaching a level no one dared to reach. Henry told everyone that he wanted them to head to Lizard Hills together when the sun sets. He instructed them to hold on to the divine item he was going to give them because the apostles, filled with divine powers, wouldn't be able to take them out without the help of the divine items. He further explained that nobody knew why Arthurs had invited them to that area, and he honestly didn't know how much force they should bring. As His Majesty suggested using teleportation, a bloody fog appeared in front of them, revealing Arthurs. Henry told Arthurs to bring only the people in the meeting room to Lizard Hills. If he ignored his words, he threatened to make all the remaining humans on the continent his apostles. Henry laughed, urging Arthurs to hurry up because he didn't know what he might do when he's bored. Arthurs then went through the portal he had opened, leaving it open for Henry and his comrades. His Majesty wondered if Arthurs wanted them to go through the portal. Henry asked his comrades if they were prepared, and they went through the portal, finding themselves in Lizard Hills' habited plains. After stepping out, they were immediately surrounded by fire. Henry used his shield magic to protect his comrades from burning to death. The apostles appeared in the middle of the fire, claiming it was a flame attack from Lidken, one of Henry's comrades. One apostle confirmed burning Ankelman to the ground as his work of art. The apostles chanted that they were the 9 apostles sent by the almighty Lord Arthurs to dispose of trash, naming themselves Khan, Isla, Renda, Cheyenne, Narva, Lidocaine, Pero, and Gluttony. Narva was the one who disposed of the trash Ankelman. Henry told his friends not to be surprised as he deactivated the shield, having placed a magic shield around everyone's body. Before he could finish talking, Blondie ran forward with his sword and struck Narva, calling him a chimera. Narva blocked the attack, pushing him with his tentacle and sending him flying to the ground, correcting Blondie that he was the great Narva, not a chimera. Narva expressed disappointment in Blondie because a dying trash called out his name, making him believe Blondie was powerful. Blondie attacked again, and Narva blocked, vowing to send him to his useless dead friend. Blondie, recalling Henry's words that their attacks wouldn't work without the divine item, put on the ring Henry gave him. As Narva lunged at him, claiming he couldn't do anything with his lame attacks, Blondie struck, surprising Narva. In his last strike, he declared it was for Ankelman and Hars. After killing Narva, Henry asked if Blondie was feeling all right. Blondie replied that he had never felt so free, praising the divine item and expressing a willingness to believe in RA or something. Henry and his group raised their fists in the air happily as they moved to eliminate the apostles. Lidocaine and his fellow apostles wondered what had just happened as Henry and his comrades ran towards them, yelling that they had nothing to fear. As they approached the apostles, Henry was suddenly surrounded by a black fog, separating him from his friends. Hearing his name being called out, Henry asked the person's identity. The man with long white hair, Draken Lodic, replied. Henry threatened to kill him if he didn't send him back to his comrades. Draken walked towards Henry, expressing surprise that Henry was the disciple of the great dead wizard. He shared that the great wizard had banned black magic, including human experiments, and ordered the hunting down of black wizards across the continent. Henry dismissed Draken's talk as rubbish and hit him with a lightning bolt. Draken, however, informed Henry that he wasn't done talking and revealed the dark deeds of the great wizard, blocking the growth of other wizards and killing innocent ones. Arthurs was the only one who understood him and opened a path for him. Henry raised his hands again as lightning appeared, apologizing for finding Draken's story boring. He attacked Draken with a lightning shot and wondered if he survived. Turning to leave after seeing Draken's dead body, Henry was shocked to witness him getting back up. Draken explained that he could revive continuously after shedding his skin, naming the process Reborn. Henry, surprised, asked, Reborn? Henry thought it was impressive that Draken came up with a way to be immortal. Draken explained that he couldn't remember the number of prisoners used for the magic, roughly around 500 people injected into his body, allowing him to be reborn up to 500 times. Henry was in disbelief that Draken conducted human experiments. Draken revealed that he stored human bodies inside him to use them, the secret of his rebirth. Henry admitted he was a fool to find it impressive, realizing why the teacher had banned human experiments and black magic. Draken, furious, lunged at Henry. Henry called out to Clever, confusing Draken with a bright light. Symbols surrounded Draken, panicking him. Henry welcomed him inside Clever's stomach, remaining unseen. He explained the magic circles, casting 8 circle spells, preparing his magic based on Draken's claim of being reborn 500 times. All the circles would be used to kill him. Henry disappeared, leaving Draken yelling that he believed in his powers and would prove his reborn magic could withstand simple attack spells. When Henry returned to his friends, Blondie explained that the black fog disappeared as they got rid of the apostles. He asked Henry about his opponent, and Henry happily replied that he faced Draken, likely on his 400th death by now. Blondie asked for clarification, and Henry assured him not to worry. Only Arthur's was left. Henry noticed Kington Porum and Ronan weren't present, and wondered where they were. Suddenly, a portal opened, and Arthur's voice was heard asking if they were looking for their friends. Henry recognized the voice saying it belonged to Arthur's. Henry then yelled for him to come out so he could kill him. Arthur's replied that their wish was his command as he used his black magic. Henry and his comrades were shocked as they found themselves at Lizard Hills, with Arthur sitting on a tree branch and Kington Porum standing under the tree. Arthur's told them to lighten up, having only lost one useless swordsman while he lost all his underlings to them. He showed the cities he hadn't attacked yet, explaining that they didn't follow his request to bring everyone in the meeting room to Lizard Hills. Now that Henry's swordsman was dead, he couldn't keep his promise, leaving him no choice but to send his devotees to the cities to turn all humans into his apostles. Arthur's clarified that Ronan was killed by Kington Porum, not him. Henry stared angrily at Kington and asked how he dared do that. Kington Porum explained that he couldn't do anything because Arthur's was controlling his body. Henry turned to his comrades and told them to proceed as planned, instructing them to go to their designated areas and protect the people. Once they teleported away, Henry was left with his 4 comrades. Arthur's asked if he was planning to battle against him with only 4 people. Henry replied as he ran toward him that it was more than enough. He lunged forward and killed Kington, then jumped up the tree and struck at Arthur's. Arthur's blocked it with a protective shield, and Henry kept pushing, hoping it would break. His Majesty and Hector stepped forward with their swords, stating that if they worked together, they could do it. Moments later, the shield broke.